Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top. Gufa. We had over here a discussion benegeh to the lashon of a Mishnah when Rabbi Yehuda speaks after the Tana Kama. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Bamed Dvarim Amurim, or Rabbi Yehuda uses the term Emasai. So there was a machlekes here between Rabbi Shua ben Levi and Shmuel, whether that means, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that means that there's no machlekes. Rabbi Yehuda is just coming to explain the Tana Kama. Shmuel says, no, still is a machlekes. So now the Gemara brings another few cases where we see this. Guf, Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Kol makom sham Rabbi Yehuda Emasai ubameh. Anytime Rabbi Yehuda says in the Mishnah the term Emasai or bameh dvarim amurim b'Mishnah Seinu in the Mishnah ein el farish divrei chachamim. He's coming to explain what the chachamim said. But Rabbi Yechanan Ama Emasai lefarish. The term Emasai means that he's coming to be mefarish. Ubameh lachlik. But Bameh, when he says Bameh Dvarim Amurim, he is coming to argue. He's coming to argue. Term Bameh Dvarim Amurim does not mean that he's Mefarish. Actually, the Rishonim say, Taisva says that even when Rabbi Yechanan says Bameh Dvarim Amurim is Lachlik, it doesn't mean that it always means Lachlik. It means that Bameh Dvarim Amurim sometimes means that he's arguing. Emasai always means Lefarish, and Bameh Dvarim Amurim sometimes means Lachlik. Frag the Gemara, Emasai Lefarishu. Is it true that when Rabbi Yehuda uses the term Emasai, it's coming to be Mefarish? Here the Gemara will bring a Mishnah and then a Braisa that will show that the term Emasai is a Machlekes. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, now this is a Mishnah in Masechta Sanhedrin, and it's based on the halacha that a Gazlan is Poseleides. Al Tashas Rasha Eid Chamos, Al Tashas Eid Rasha and Chamos, and the Gemara says that it refers to a Gazlan. So a Gazlan that's Pasal Eidos includes also Midrabana in certain cases that are not outright Gazlanim, but they're Pasal also Eidos. So the Mishnah there gives a list. Ve'elein Apsulin, these are the people that are Pasal Eidos. Hamasachik Bekuvya, person that plays with a dice, in other words, basically gambling. And the reason why you Pasal Eidos by gambling is because when a person gambles and he wins or he loses, so even though you're taking the money, so you're not stealing from anybody, but you're not relying, so we'll see soon in the Gemara, when you are thinking to yourself that I'm going to win, that's what you're really thinking to yourself. So when you lose, you're not really happy about the fact that the other person is taking the money. You really, even though the Chayri is not taking a big zayla, but as the Gemara, as Rashi here brings the Lashon, we'll see soon in the Gemara, asmachte loy kanya. When you make a condition with somebody that I'm going to get it, but also could be I won't. You're not relying on the fact that you're not going to get it. You really want it. And if you don't get it, so then you're not relying on that condition and you're unhappy with it. So therefore the Kinyan is not kaina, huh?
Meaning his mindset is that he's not...
Correct. So therefore in Masachik Bekuvya is Midrabanan Gzeila. It's Gzeila Midrabanan. So you postulate this. Malva Beribis, a person that borrows money or lends money with interest. So even though it's not Gzeila, the loive, the borrower, you made up with him, and you were over the Isser of Ribis, but that's not the psul of the Eidus. The psul of the Eidus is, so Rashi explains, not over here, Rashi says over there in Sanhedrin, if a person is lending money with interest, so that means that he has a taiva for the money, and therefore it's similar to a person that's stealing things that are not his. So Medarabanon, it's Pasal Eidus. People that make competitions with their birds, similar to gambling, where they let their birds fly, whoever's going to make it to the one place first, the different competitions and races and things like that, is also asmachto lekanya, that the person says that he's relying on this, he doesn't really rely on this, and therefore he's not happy with giving up his money. Seichare shvius, people that do business with money in shmita, Rashi brings the pasuk, la'achla v'loy l'schaira. So because he's dealing with money that he's not supposed to, so therefore it's not only the Isser of Shvius, but it's also similar to Gzeila, that he's wants money, he takes and uses money that he's not supposed to. So therefore it's Pasal Eidus Midrabanan. That's the Tana Kama. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Emasai, when are all these cases going to be Pasal Bizman, or going back to the case of Masachik Bekuvya, and so on? When is it going to be possible? Bisman she'en le omnis, if he has no other job. Elehi, just this is his whole job. He gambles all day, or mafriche yainim all day. Aval yesh le omnis, if he does have another job, shaloi he, besides this, harei ze kosher, he will be kosher. In other words, what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? So Rashi here explains, the issue over here is not the gzela. The issue over here is that this is a person that's not oisik bi yeshuvay shel olam. He's not a person that's part of society. He's not a normal, productive member of society that has a job and makes money like a normal person. That's the reason why it's posel. Such a person that's not oisik bi yeshuvay shel olam, we can't trust his edus. So Rabbi Yehuda has a completely different opinion about this. It's not about the fact that it's a gzelim with the Rabbanon. No. The issue is that you're not Isaac b'Yeshuva Shalom. So as long as you have a normal job, even if you have these other things that you do that are not appropriate, it's okay. You could be still kosher leidus. Now, is this a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda? So says the Gemara, V'tani Allah be'braisa, v'chachamim maimrim, the chachamim say, bein she'ein lo yomnis, Elohi, ben sheyesh lo umnis, shalohi. Whether you don't have another job, whether you do have another job, it doesn't make any difference. Harei zeh pasal. Either way, you're going to be pasal eidos. So in this braisa, we clearly see that it is a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. And what was the language Rabbi Yehuda used? Emasai. So you see over here that even when you say Emasai, it means there's a machlokes. So how could Rabbi Yechanan say that Emasai means lefarish, that he's not arguing? Answers the Gemara. Hahi the Rabbi Yehuda Rab Tarfon hi. Over here, this is not the Tanakama of the Mishnah. In this Braisa, the machlokes that you have in this Braisa, it's not the same Tana as the Mishnah. In that Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda was arguing with Rab Tarfon. Over there, at first Rabbi Yehuda was bringing in the name of Rab Tarfon, and then Rabbi Yehuda himself argued. But the Tanakama of the Mishnah, Taka, did not argue with Rabbi Yehuda. The Braisa is a different Tana. It's Rab Tarfon. Where do we see that this was Rab Tarfon? The Tanya we learned in the Braisa. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishom Rab Tarfon. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rab Tarfon that La'olam ein echad mem nazir. What is this talking about? So Rashi here brings the case. There were two people that were sitting together, and someone was walking towards them, and they were having an argument. The guy that's walking towards them, is he a nazir or is he not a nazir? So one person says, if this guy walking here is a nazir, I'll be a nazir. And the other guy says, if this guy walking here is not a nazir, I'll be a nazir. Right? And then what happens? He comes, the person that was walking towards him, they see who it is, and they see if he's a nazir or not. So now you would think, what should be the halacha? The one that was right should be a nazir. If he was a nazir, so then this guy's a nazir. If he wasn't a nazir, the other guy should be a nazir. Says Rab Tarfon, no. Lo oilam ein echad mehem nazir. Even after you find out what the truth was, none of them will be a nazir. Why? Lefi she'ein naziros elo lahaflo. Naziros, it only takes effect if it's hafla. What does the word hafla mean? You have to say it clearly. You have to say something that when you spoke it, you knew what you're talking about and you meant it clearly. When each one of them said that I'm going to be a nazir, he said it not being sure about it, b'chlal. He was relying, if it turns out that he is a nazir, then I'll also be a nazir. But while you're saying it, you're not even sure about it if it's true. So the Torah by Nazir says, lahafli, as Rashi here brings the pasuk, hafla, lahafli. Rashi does not bring the pasuk, but it says lahafli, that it has to be something that you're saying, and you knowing that what you're saying is true and clear. Then the Nazir takes effect. That's what Rab Tarfon said. So Alma, what do we see from there, from this halacha of Naziris? Kivin the misapkele nazir eloi naziru. Since B'shas you were saying, I'm going to be a nazir, you were basing it on this other person, and you weren't even sure whether he's a nazir or not. So you didn't really truly, you weren't serious about making yourself a nazir because you didn't know. We apply the same concept in a get to a kinyan as well. When a person he's not sure, am I going to win? Am I not going to win? So when a person is playing around with gambling and the other things that I mentioned before, and a person is not sure about it, the kinyan does not take effect. He's not saimich on it. Asmachta loikanya. So therefore, this is Rab Tarfon is the one that holds that the issue of gambling is whether you have another job, whether you don't have another job. The kinyan did not take effect. So therefore, it's gzeilim with the Rabbanan, and therefore you're going to be pasal eidos. That's only Rab Tarfon. Whereas the Chachamim, in the Mishnah, they didn't hold like Rab Tarfon. They agreed to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that the issue of gambling is not that the kinyan didn't take effect. It's a different issue. The kinyan did take effect, but what's the issue? The issue is that you're not being Isaac b'Yeshuvah shalaylam. So it's interesting that the Gemara here makes this connection, which B'pashta seems to be a far-fetched connection, from Naziris to a kinyan. That B'shas you make a neder, you have to have clarity to know who you're making, what you're doing. You have to know B'shas you're speaking. And the same thing is also by a kinyan, that the kinyan only takes effect if we know that you had a clear kavanah that you relied on this. The Pashtus, you might think that by Naziris it's Exeris HaKosov. So Taisvis, not over here, Taisvis in Sanhedrin talks about this and says that the Chiddush of our Gemara is that because the Torah wrote Lahafli by Naziris, we learn out from Naziris that the kavanah of a person matters benegeh to what he says. It's an Indian klali that we learn out when a person speaks. Could I take the person's word seriously or not? A lot of times a person says things and he's not serious about it. So we see here from the Naziris an Indian klali, not only benegeh to Naziris, but b'chlal, benegeh to any chalais. When you want to make a chalais, a kinyan to take effect, something that's a new status, that should change the kinyan of something, the ownership, and it's based on the words of a person. The words of a person only have power if you know that the person was serious about his words. If when he's speaking it, we don't even know that he was relying on the words that he's saying, the words don't have any kayach. That's the thing that the Torah teaches us by Naziris, that's Negeya by Kenyanim as well.
Yeah, but by Kenyan here there's no dibur, it's just a mindset.
Again? No, there's a dibur as well.
By Misachim Kuvya?
There's an agreement. No, there is an agreement that they make. There's an agreement that they make before they gamble that whoever is going to win the dice, whatever, there's an agreement that they make. So the question is that agreement serious or not? So we learn out from the Ziros that it's not, according to the Tarfim. Now, the Tana of the Mishnah disagrees. He says no. Rabbi Yehuda and the Tana Kama says that's not. No, we don't compare it to Naziris. And once a person says something, he has a koyach to create a kinyan. Hadron Allah Chaloin. So we begin a new Pedic. This Pedic, at least in the beginning, goes back to Eiruvin Tchumen. We had the last 2 prakim, or maybe even 3 prakim. Was about Erev Chatzeres. Now the Mishnah comes back to discuss details regarding Erev Tchumen. Sagt the Mishnah, Keitzat Mishtatvim B'Tchumen. How are people going to participate in Erev Tchumen? In other words, when you want to make an Erev Tchumen for all the people of the city, not just yourself, so there's one person that's putting down food in the area that everyone should be able to walk in that direction. So how do you do this? You take a barrel of food and you put it down there, and he says, I'm putting it for all the people of my city. For anyone that wants to go to do Nichem Avelim or to a Beis HaMishta, to a Chasana. So, as we'll see in the Gemara, that is the purpose of an Erev Tchumen, to be able to go and do a mitzvah. And it's either Nichem Avelim or Beis HaMishta, it's examples of a mitzvah. Which you see over here in this Mishnah that Me'ikar Adin, Nichem Avelim could be done on Shabbos. And that's, by the way, the halach in Shulchan Aruch. Me'ikar Adin, Nichem Avelim could be done on Shabbos just like the weekday. Elamai B'Payel, it says that our minig is not to do Nichem Avelim on Shabbos. It's a machlekes actually, Beishamai and Basil, whether you should be Menachem Avel on Shabbos. Beishamai holds you're not Menachem Avel on Shabbos, and Basil holds you are. Huh? No, but even B'chlal, Nichem Avelim, I'm not talking about to be Noyeg Avelis, to be Menachem Avelim. But B'Payel, the minig is not to be Menachem Avel on Shabbos. But Me'ikar Adin, you can be Menachem Avel on Shabbos. So here we're talking about a person that wants to go be Menachem Avel in a distance in that direction of the city, and you put down the Erev over there. So one person puts it down, having everyone else in mind. Now, V'chol shekibul olav mibayid yain. So when he puts it down for all the people of the city, it's not enough. The people of the city has to be makabel upon themselves that mibayid yain, before Shabbos begins, that I want to use this Erev Tchumen. So then, if you makabel upon yourself in Beit Yom that it's for you, that you want to use it, then mutter. You'll be able to go in that direction. If you decide later on that you want to use it after it became Shabbos already, then osir. Then it won't work for you. The klal always is Erev Tchumen, just like you can't place down the food there after Ben Hashmoshes, so you can't make a decision afterwards that now, I decided I want to join, I want to go there as well. You have to make that decision before Shabbos. The purpose of an Erev Tchumen could only be for the sake of a mitzvah. You can't make an Erev Tchumen stam to walk in that direction if there's no mitzvah involved in this. My kamash malan, what's the chiddush? Tanina, isn't this clearly what the Mishnah is saying here? That you're putting it down for people of the city if they're going to do Nichem Avelim or to Chasana, which are both a mitzvah, to go and either for either of them, it's a mitzvah. So isn't that clear in the Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, no, not necessarily. I would have thought that the Mishnah is stam using an example which is common, but it's not necessarily being medayik that it's dafka a mitzvah. Ashmalan, therefore Rav Yosef said that when the Mishnah says Beis HaAvel and Beis HaMishta, it was dafka. Only a mitzvah is what you can make an Erev Tchumen for. So just 2 points about this. First of all, the whole meaning of Erev Tchumen is a kula of Chazal. Because be'emes, the fact that you put down food there and then you go back home and you're living at home, so what's the concept of Erev Tchumen? That I'm living there where I put down my food. You put down a piece of bread and it's kilo, you live there, and then you can walk in that direction. It's a kula of Chazal. Person goes back home and lives where he is at home. So this kula that Chazal will makel, they only said this kula for the purpose of a mitzvah. Stamazai, without any mitzvah involved, this kula does not apply. That's just the hezbollah of what the Gemara is saying. Number two, when it says here mitzvah, so what exactly qualifies for mitzvah? So we said here Beis Avla and Beis HaMishta. So we see that mitzvah includes something that in Beis Avla and Beis HaMishta, there's a big machlokes about this, whether it's a mitzvah min ha-Torah, it's a mitzvah midrabanan of Nichem Avelim, whether it's a mitzvah min ha-Torah, a mitzvah midrabanan. Beis HaMishta is a mitzvah min ha-Torah, a mitzvah midrabanan. It's also machlokes about that. But the ikir is that when the Gemara says mitzvah, it says b'feidish and Shulchan Aruch that mitzvah includes even for a person that wants to go and take a walk on Shabbos, and he wants to be metayel, and mitzvah the einik Shabbos, the simcha of Shabbos and Yontiv, that's also a mitzvah. So if a person wants to take a walk in that direction out of the city, and he wants to rely on this Erev Tchumen to take a walk, so then that's also part of a mitzvah. So it doesn't refer dafka to a mitzvah only like Beis Avla and Beis HaMishta, but even simcha and einik and Shabbos.
Then on the double safe, every time a person wants to go
why on
that
the double
direction,
safe?
because a person, why is he putting it there? Because he wants to go there. That's part of his Einik
So if
Shabbos.
there's Seder, okay, and a chanami, so that's part of a mitzvah. But if a person is going and walking in that direction, okay, and a chanami. If it's a teal, if there's an einig involved, so then it's a part of a mitzvah. You see this all the time when you're in the Catskills. They have over there's an issue of the tchumen, and you put down an Erev Tchumen, and people take walks on Shabbos. And how far could you walk? Where a person wants to take a walk. And you can walk as far as you want with the Erev Tchumen, because it's also part of a mitzvah. So that's for sure a purpose of a mitzvah.
Beis HaMishta to go to Bris to be Mishmei Chas Matana or what? It's a mitzvah deraisa.
It could be. There's a tzad to say that there's a mitzvah deraisa involved of Ahavas Yisrael or for sure. So, Zok the Gemara Vayte v'chol shekibel olav mebayid yain. What did it say in the Mishnah? So you have one person that's letting everybody know. But Pashtus, the way that Gemara understood now is what's happening over here. One person makes an announcement in shul, lets everybody know, I'm putting down an Erev for the whole community. Now, says the Gemara, but if you want that Erev to work for you, you have to be makabel upon yourself before Shabbos. Not if you're makabel upon yourself on Shabbos. Sagt the Gemara, Shamit Mina, if so, l'chayre we could prove from our Mishnah, Ein Breida, that I could not decide later, and that will not clarify retroactively that I meant to be part of it from before. This is a concept that we had many times, Breida, that when something happens later, it clarifies what really was before. The Yesh Breida, if I would say that there's a concept of Breida, Tigli Milsalim Afreya, even if he does decide on Shabbos itself that he wants to use the Erev, shouldn't that retroactively prove that even from before Shabbos, he was satisfied to use this Erev, even if he didn't explicitly make that decision before Shabbos, but once he makes that decision on Shabbos itself, shouldn't that prove that he already really wanted it from before Shabbos? We had this in the same minyan, but you get the Erev Tchumen in a similar thing, where a person has an Erev Tchumen that was put down for him in two directions. And then, so which one is his Erev Tchumen? To the south or to the north? And then on Shabbos itself, he goes to the south. So the Gemara says, now that he went in that direction, we know that shows L'mafreya that he was more interested in that one, in that direction, and not in the other direction. So over here the Gemara is applying the same point, that if he was aware of this Erev Tchumen before Shabbos, Elamai, he didn't explicitly make that decision, but once he makes that decision on Shabbos, that proves retroactively that he wanted to rely on this Erev Tchumen. So over here, the fact that the Mishnah says you don't rely on it, that proves that Ein Breida. Taisus over here says that since we're talking about Erev Tchumen, which is a midrabanan, usually the klal is that by inyanim that on a game minat Torah, we say Ein Breida, we're machmer, that you can't rely retroactively. When it comes to inyanim midrabanan, we say Yesh Breida. So over here in this Mishnah, we're talking about something which is midrabanan, and still we say that it doesn't clarify retroactively. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi, no, our Mishnah is not a raya b'chlal. You know what the case is? Haydiyuhu v'loy haydiyuhu ketani. Over here, when it talks about the difference between midboidyaim or mishatech, the case is not like I said before, that the announcement was made and everybody heard, everybody knew that the Erev Tchumen was being made. A person went and put Erev Tchumen for the people of the city. Some people were b'chlal aware of this, and some people were not aware of this. When it says that he was mishatech, it means Erst after Shabbos, he found out that the Eid of Tchumen was placed there. So you can't say that now that he made his decision that he wants to be part of it, it shows retroactively that he wanted to be part of it before. He can't. He didn't know about it before B'chlal. That's what the Mishnah meant to say. He never knew about it. So in such a case, if he finds out about it on Shabbos, too late. Can't make an Eid of Tchumen on Shabbos. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Amar Rav Asi, Koton ben Sheish, a child that's 6 years old, or actually ben Sheish does not mean 6 years old. Ben Sheish means in his 6th year. In other words, 5 years old. So in that age of Sheish, Yetze be'edav imay. So he goes out with the edav of his mother. Because he needs his mother, he's attached to his mother, so wherever his mother puts down the edav, he goes together with his mother. And he doesn't need a separate edav for himself. The Gemara, is that the age? Is the age 5 years old? Meisvei, we learned in the Braise, Kotten shetzarech li'imay, Yetze be'edav imay. A Kotten that needs his mother goes out together with his mother with an edav. V'she'ein tzarech li'imay, if he does not need his mother, so then he's independent. Ein Yetze be'edav imay. An edav that was placed down, that the mother made, the child cannot walk out together with the mother. That's what it says in the Braise. But then there's a Mishnah, another Mishnah that tells us about the age of a child needing the mother. Famous Mishnah in Masechta Sukkah, Tana Nami Gabi Sukkah. What does it say when you get to the obligation of being mechanach a child in the mitzvah of Sukkah? Kehai Gavna, a similar thing. Katan shein tzarech li'imay, a child that doesn't need his mother anymore. Chayev b'Sukkah. You have to be mechanach him in the mitzvah of Sukkah. So what v'havinam ba? The question was asked over there. Ve'izeu katan shein tzarech li'imay. What's the age of a child that doesn't need his mother? And Amri debei Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai says 2 things. One is kol shenifne ve'im imay mekan chasei. One is a case where a child is using the bathroom and the mother does not have to wipe him. And another is Rab Shimon ben Lakish Omar kol shenei mishnasai, a child that wakes up in the middle of the night ve'ena kaire ima, and that does not call his mother. That's a child that's already independent and mature enough that you have to be mechanech him for the mitzvah of Sukkah. So the Gemara clarifies that's the second shear that it just said over here. Ima salkadaitach, is it only a child that doesn't call his mother when he wakes up at night? So Rashi explains, the Gemara here says, Gedolim nami karu. Even children that are older are definitely going to call their mother in the middle of the night. Right? So even mature children, they wake up in the middle of the night, they call their mother. So even if sometimes a child that could be 7, 8, 9 years old will also call a mother in the middle of the night. So how could you say that that's the shear, that you're not going to be chayiv and sukkah, and if you don't call your mother in the middle of the night at all? Says the Gemara, no, that's not what it is. Kol shenei mishnasai ve'ena kaire ima. When you have a child that wakes up in the middle of the night and he's so afraid that he's persistent, he calls ima and he won't stop calling his mother until the mother comes, that's a child that's not mature enough to be chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah. So regarding over this sukkah, the Gemara concludes vikama. And what's the age? Kebar arba or kebar chamesh? 4 or 5. Right? So again, just to clarify, whenever the Gemara uses these terms, arba and chamesh, it really means from 3 years old or 4 years old. Arba means in the 4th year of his life, which is after his 3rd birthday, and 5 means in the 5th year of his life after the 4th birthday, what we call 4 years old. So 3 or 4 years old. Before we said in the 6th year of his life, 5 years old. Over here by sukkah, what's the conclusion? That we see that the shear is a child that wakes up in the middle of the night and is persistent, calls his mother. That's dependent on his mother. But otherwise, what's considered to be older is already kibar arba chamish, not sheish. Rav Yeshua Bereder Ravidi says we have to go back and reinterpret what was said before. Who was it speaking before? Rav Asi. When Rav Asi said Katan ben Sheish, he meant something totally different. Ki ka'omer Rav Asi, kagayin she'iriv olav aviv l'tzafin. When a father makes an edah for his child to go to one direction, to the tzafin. V'ima ila darim. And the mother made an edah to go to darim. So now the question is, where is a child more dependent on? Who is a child going to be interested in going with more? Is a child dependent on his mother or on his father? That's the case that we're talking about. That there was an edah made in 2 opposite directions. So over here the chiddush is that if the child has a choice to go with the father, to go with the mother, until the age of ben sheish, after he's 5 years old, the child would rather go with the mother and not with the father. That was the case. Rav Asi was talking about when you have a question, when you have a choice, whether the child should go with the father or with the mother. But if you're talking about b'chlal, when you get to making an eid of tchumen, whether the child is included in the eid of tchumen on the mother, over there the age is younger. Over there, the age is like it says by Sukkah, bar Arba or bar Chomish. Talk to Gemara weiter. There's another brayse that actually says different. Meisvei, it says in another brayse clearly, Katan shetzarach li'imai, Yaitze be'eruv imai, a cotton that needs his mother, so he goes out together with his mother in the eruv, and the kama, and what's the age? Ad ben sheish, until 6 years old. So over here in this brayse it says ad ben sheish. So to Yufte, the Rav Yeshua bar Idi, this refutes this answer of Rav Yeshua bar Idi. Rav Yeshua bar Avidi that said that we go according to the shir that it says by Sukkah. What did it say by Sukkah? Bar Chomesh, Bar Arba, which means 3 or 4 years old. Over here it says Ad Ben Sheish, until 6 years old, which means when he's until the beginning of the 6th year. Okay, so the whole answer of Rav Yeshua bar Avidi that he did not, that he accepted the shir that it says by Sukkah is refuted. Sagt the Gemara Tiyufta. Over here we see it does say Ad Ben Sheish. Fragt the Gemara, Leime Teheve Tiyufta de Rav Asi. Should this brayse that we just quoted now, Ad Ben Sheish, also refute what Rav Ashi said? How does it refute Rav Ashi? So Rashi explains, because what did Rav Asi say? Rav Asi said, Cotton Ben Sheish. A child that's in his 6th year already could still go out with his mother. What did it say over here? Ad ben sheish, until the 6th year. Meaning until, the Gemara now understands, it means until the beginning of his 6th year, not including that. So it refutes what Rav Asi said as well. Amalach Rav Asi says, no, it's not a raya against me. Ad va'ad b'chlal. When it said ad ben sheish, in this case, ad means including the 6th year as well. So there, it's exactly what Rav Asi said. Okay, so if so, fragt the Gemara, to Rav Yanai. So going back to what Rav Yanai said before, b'negei ta Sukkah, what did Rav Yanai say before by Sukkah? Ad ben Chomesh. So the age is bar Arba, bar Chomesh. Over here we see that in this brayse it says Ad ben Sheish, and it's Ad va'ad b'chlal. So l'chayre we could refute what Rav Yanai said. Leimet have to Yufte the Rav Yanai vir Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish as well. Reish Lakish is the one that gave the shir, Ner Mishnasai. Rav Yanai is the one that explained also that it's Shekaire Ima, and the Gemara said both Reish Lakish and Rav Yanai held it's Bar Arba or Bar Chomish, and over here it says Ad Ben Sheish. Answers the Gemara, no, it's not. We can give a different answer. The emes is we can give a different answer, and it's B'chlal not a stira. Loi kashe, it's not a question. Ha the isei avui b'masa. In the case where we say that the maturity is until the age of ben Chamesh and Arba is because the father is here in the city. Ha the loy isiavu b'masa, and over here the father is not in the city. When the father is in the city, so the child is not so dependent on the mother. When the father is not in the city, the child is more dependent on the mother. So then, even to an older age, the child is going to be dependent on the mother. So the b'negei to Eruv, whether the child could go together with the mother, when the mother made an Eruv, it makes a difference if the father's here. If the father's around, the child doesn't feel so dependent on the mother, so that the age is going to be older. But when the father's not around, so then the child is more dependent on the mother, the age is going to be older. Okay, so the Gemara now is giving a new answer to the whole stira that we had from what it said by Sukkah to what it said over here, b'negei to Eretz Tchumen. Not like the original answer that it said before in the name of Rav Yeshua bar Avidi.
From here you clearly see, even the Rabbanan, you need the union of Chinuch. Because it's the Rabbanan inherits
the mitzvah of Eiruvin, the union of Eiruvin. So if you look in Taisvis, in the bottom of Amud Aleph, so Taisvis actually says two pshatim. One pshat Taisvis says, like you're saying, the second pshat Taisvis says is like you're saying. The reason why the child goes out together with the mother in the mitzvah of in Erev Tchumen is because of
his own that he needs his own
Oh, okay. So I thought you meant b'negei to when he's relying on his mother, that he goes out together with his mother because mitzvah lechanchai. Oh, he needs his own native also. Okay, but then Taisva says when a child goes out together with his mother because it's koroch achareh. The child is attached to the mother, so whatever the mother did, automatically the child is included in that. But yeah, definitely, you see when you get to mitzvahs mit der Rabbanan, there's in the union of chinuch. It's yeah. So now, once we brought up this idea of a cotton that follows the mother, so the question is also there's different examples where one person makes an eruv and there's other people that follow along with your eruv. So the Brayse says, Ma'arav Adam al Yedei B'naya Bita Ktanim. You make an eruv for your son or daughter that are Ktanim. Al Yedei Avdei V'Shivchasi Knanim. You make an eruv also for an Eved and a Shivcha that are Knanim. So beni l'daitam, ben shalei l'daitam. In these cases, you can make an eruv for their sake, and you don't have to get their permission to include them in your eruv tchumen to go in that direction. So these people don't have their own rishus, their own. So therefore, when you make the eruv, you don't have to get the permission from them. When you made the eruv and you had them in mind, so they follow your eruv tchumen.
Yedei means for them?
Yes, for their purpose. Aval eina ma'arev loyal yedei avdoi v'shivchasei ha'ivrim. You can't make an eruv for the purpose of an eved and a shivcha, which are yidden. V'loyal yedei bnei bitui agdailim, and not for your son or daughter that are already gedailim. They're independent. V'loyal yedei ishtoi, and you don't make an eruv for your wife either. Ela midaitam, unless you told them that you're making the eruv for them. They're independent, and therefore you make an eruv. You can't make the eruv for them to go in that direction. That's one brayse. Tanya Idach, in another brayse it says the same thing, but in this brayse it adds more. Lo ya'arav adam al yedei bnei bitui agdailim. You cannot make the eruv for the purpose of your son or daughter that are already gedailim. Ve'al yedei, or the Bach over here adds, ve'lo al yedei avdoi v'shivchasei ivrim, and not for the purpose of an eved and a shivcha which are yidden. Ve'lo al yedei ishtoi, and not for your wife. Ela midaitan, only if you have their permission. Aval ma'arvu al yedei avdoi v'shivchasei kananim. You can make an eruv for eved and shivcha kananis. V'yedei bnei bitui aktanim, for the purpose of your son and daughter which are still ktanim. Ben ledaitan, ben shalei ledaitan, whether they agree or whether they don't agree. Mipnei sheyodon ki yodei, because their hand is like yours. You have the koyach over them to make the eruv for them. Then now here this brayse adds another detail. V'kulon she'irvu, in this case, let's say the eved and the shivcha kananis, let's say. If they made their own eruv, v'irev aleyan, and you made an eruv for them, so Rabban Yaitze, v'irev aleyan Rabban, v'irev aleyan Rabban, and their master made an eruv for them, Yaitzin b'shal Rabban, they follow the eruv of their master, and they don't follow their own eruv. They have to go with your eruv that you made for them. And so if they made an eruv in another direction than you, so they follow your eruv. Chutz mina isha, besides the case of a wife, that if she makes her own eruv, so then she doesn't have to follow her husband's eruv, mipnei sheyachayla limchais. Because a woman, a wife, she can protest against her husband's eruv. She's independent. If her husband made an eruv for her in one direction, she can make an eruv for herself in another direction. Like it said in the beginning of the brayse, that a isha is independent. Fragt the Gemara, isha Maishna, why is the Braisa mentioning only Isha? Only a Isha is independent? Didn't we say before that Bnoi, Bita, your sons, your daughters, if they're Gedalim, they're also independent? Or an Eved and a Shivcha that are Ivrim are also independent? Why is it mentioned only a Isha which is independent? Amarabi, you're right. The Pshat in the Braisa is Isha v'chol the domila. When it says that a woman is independent and she makes her eruv in her own direction, it doesn't mean only an Isha. It means an Isha and the others that were mentioned earlier in the Braisa that are similar to her, which includes a son and a daughter that are G'dailim. But now the Gemara has another question on this. Omar, what was the lashon of the Braisa here that it said Chutz minei Isha, a woman can make her own eruv? Why? Because she could protest against her husband, and therefore she can doesn't have to follow her husband's eruv. So what does this mean? Time the machi. When do I say that a woman doesn't have to follow her husband's eruv because she protested? Hastame, but if not, if it's a case that her husband made an eruv for her and she did not protest, nafke b'debaila, then she does follow her husband's eruv automatically, even without her husband asking her permission. Hakatani reisha. What did it say in the reisha? Ela midaitam. That the eruv that you make, having your wife in mind, does not work. You have to get profetish permission from her. So my love, the omri in. Doesn't that mean that the husband's eruv for his wife will only work if his wife gave a consent, a clear consent? Not necessarily. My ela midaitam. What it means that the husband's eruv works for his wife if he has permission from her. The ishtiku, if she was quiet, if she was aware of it, she knew about the eruv and she was quiet. You don't have to have a clear consent. La'afuki heiche the amri loy. The only time that the husband's eruv will not work for the wife or for the other children that are already gedolim, if they befedish protested. Okay. Sagt the Gemara, but it doesn't make sense. Ha v'kulon she'irvu v'irv alein rabban yaitzim shel rabban. What was the case of the Braisa? The case of the Braisa was that they made an eruv for themselves. and the master made an Eruv for them. And what does it say? Yaitzim b'shel Rabban. That in the case of an Eved and a Shivcha Kananis, they go out with their master's Eruv. And what's the case over here? Does it say in the Braisa that there was a consent? We're talking about a case that there was a befeirish consent? No. V'stama ketani. V'stamahu, it's a case of stama. The master made an Eruv for them without a befeirish consent. V'katani chutz mine isha deloi nafki. And in this case it says that the master or the husband makes an Eruv for his wife, and it doesn't say in the Braisa that he got a befeirish consent, and nevertheless it says that a wife does not go out with the husband's Eruv. So how can you tell me that a wife is included in her husband's Eruv as long as she was quiet? Right, so what's going on in the Gemara? We have three cases. We have a case where a woman gives a befeirish consent, that's on one side. We have the case where a woman protests, that's clear that she's protesting. And then you have the middle case, stama. She's not saying anything. So the Gemara wanted to say, when it's stama, when she's quiet, we consider it to be like she's agreeing. But over here in the Braisa we see that it's talking about a case of a stama, where the master or the husband made an Eruv, and the woman was quiet, and it said chutz mine isha, she's not included in the Eruv. And in the end of the Braisa it says, only if she's protesting she's not part of the Eruv. So what's the pshat? Says the Gemara, Amarave, kiven she'irvu ein lecha michui gadol mizeh. When it says over here that the master made one Eruv and the Eved and Shivcha made a different Eruv, it's true that the master made an Eruv stam, but the fact that they made their own Eruv, that's the biggest protest. If you're making your own Eruv in an opposite direction, so then that's the greatest protest possible to this Eruv. So therefore you're not included in the Eruv. So the conclusion of the Gemara is that the only time that a wife or children that are already Gedolim are not going to be included in the Eruv is if they are befeirish going to protest. Either going to clearly speak up, or they're going to make their own Eruv, which is the greatest protest possible. But as long as they're quiet, if the father made an Eruv for the family, the Eruv is going to work for the entire family if they don't say anything else. Okay, we'll stop over here. The next thing is Hemshech to the